Welcome to Deep Dive on your channel, Book Echoes. Today we are diving deep into, well, a phenomenon. It's the self-help book that isn't really a self-help book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck.
It's definitely a title that grabs your attention, and the author, Mark Manson, he really leveraged his platform. I mean, he was a star blogger first, had more than 2 million readers before this book even hit the shelves.
Right, he's based in New York City,
Yeah.
and his whole thing is refusing to give you those, usual feel-good mantras.
Exactly.
His mission, he calls it practical enlightenment. So the goal isn't to feel perpetually amazing. It's about helping you choose what genuinely matters, prioritizing your mental energy. He argues that we're all kind of immersed in this psychological epidemic where people have forgotten a really basic truth,
Which is?
that it's okay for things to suck sometimes.
And that is such a necessary message today. I mean, the really revolutionary hook here is that Manson just embraces that suffering and disappointment are inevitable. He tells us the goal of life shouldn't be happiness at all.
Okay, so if not happiness, then what?
It should be choosing the quality of the struggle you're willing to endure.
Let's unpack that. The first big idea he lays out, he calls it the fixation trap.
Yes.
This is that cultural obsession with, these unrealistically positive expectations. You have to be happier, healthier, smarter, richer, perfect, amazing. Every single platform is screaming this at us.
And that's the trap. It
Yeah.
is this constant, relentless flood of extraordinary information from media, from social platforms. It doesn't actually inspire you. It just drives this massive insecurity and entitlement.
It's just a constant reminder of what you lack, right? If all you see are these perfect lives, you're just reinforcing the idea that your life is, well, not that.
Exactly. It creates this toxic chase, which leads to what he calls the backwards law.
The backwards law, this is where it gets really counterintuitive.
It's the ultimate paradox. The law states that the very desire for a positive experience is itself a negative experience. If you're desperate to be rich, that desperation just reinforces your internal feeling of being poor.
So wait, by that logic, accepting a negative experience is actually a positive experience.
Precisely.
So if I'm on a first date and I'm trying really, really hard to be impressive and confident, that effort I'm putting in actually makes me seem less charming. The more I'm pursuing that connection, the more I'm just highlighting to myself that I'm maybe awkward or undeserving.
You've got it. The pursuit itself highlights what you think you're missing. To break that loop, you have to stop prioritizing the feeling and instead prioritize acceptance. If you're just open about your insecurities, you paradoxically become more confident because you're showing you accept yourself.
But doesn't that risk leading to, I don't know, apathy? Or just defeatism? If I stop trying to improve my career, how does anything worthwhile ever get done?
Well, that's the key distinction. He's not advocating for apathy. He's advocating for choosing your struggle. He argues that everything worthwhile, getting strong at the gym, hitting a career goal, building trust, it's all won by overcoming some related negative experience.
So if you avoid the suffering of the workout, you suffer from poor health. The avoidance of suffering is just another kind of suffering.
Exactly. Pain isn't a bug in the system. It's the engine of progress. And avoiding failure is, well, it's a failure in itself. And to really drive this home, this idea of self-acceptance over desperate trying, he brings up the poet Charles Bukowski.
Bukowski. His story is the perfect example of that don't try idea. I mean, he was the classic lout, a deadbeat, filing letters at a post office for decades.
And his work was constantly rejected, called crude and depraved. He was the definition of an outsider who just accepted his own failure.
And then at 50 years old, a small publisher gives him a shot. He writes his first novel, Post Office, in just 3 weeks. It sells millions. It seems like the classic story of persistence paying off.
It seems that way, right? Except for the twist. His tombstone epitaph famously reads, "Don't try."
Which is the ultimate punchline.
It is. His success didn't come from pushing relentlessly to become a great poet. It came from him accepting his status as a failure and just writing honestly about his reality as a drunk post office worker. He stopped trying to be anything other than what he was.
Okay, but I have to ask, how does that don't try mindset really fit with the message that we have to choose and manage our struggles? Isn't accepting failure the same as just giving up?
That's the insight. Bukowski wasn't defeated. He just stopped trying to live by someone else's metric for success. He wasn't trying to write like Hemingway. He accepted his own flaws and wrote from that place. The failure he accepted was the failure to be conventionally successful, and that freed him up to define success on his own terms.
And that leads right into what he calls the rock star problem.
Yes, the comparison between Dave Mustaine of Megadeth and Pete Best from the Beatles, it's all about the danger of external metrics.
Right. So Mustaine gets kicked out of Metallica right before they become, the biggest band on the planet.
A huge blow. And even though he forms Megadeth, and they sell over 25 million albums, which is a staggering success, he chose a poison metric.
Which was
Be more popular and successful than Metallica?
an impossible goal, given they sold over 180 million albums. So because of that metric, he spent decades publicly saying he still felt like a failure. His success was defined by his failure to be better than someone else.
Now, you contrast that with Pete Best, the original Beatles drummer. He gets fired right before Beatlemania explodes. He went into a catastrophic depression. I mean, he missed the biggest opportunity in music history.
But then he changed his values. He stopped measuring his life by fame and glory, things that were external and uncontrollable. He rebuilt his life around internal values: a loving family, a stable life, simplicity.
And the result, Best later said publicly that he was happier than I would have been with the Beatles because he shifted his metric. He prioritized controllable internal fulfillment over uncontrollable external fame.
That's the whole point, isn't it? Your values determine the metrics you measure yourself by. If you want to stop feeling like a failure, you don't necessarily need more success. You need to change how you define success.
Which means changing what you value. And that shift is absolutely critical for navigating the mental traps of today, especially what Manson calls the feedback loop from hell.
Oh, this one is so relatable. It's when you're anxious about money, and then you get anxious about being anxious.
Or you're worried about how much you're drinking, and then you feel guilty about feeling guilty. It's this spiral where the feeling itself becomes the second problem.
And it's fueled by that societal pressure we talked about. Social media, marketing. This whole culture of positivity that says having negative feelings, anxiety, fear, guilt is just not okay.
Right. We feel bad about feeling bad.
Yeah.
Which makes us feel bad for being the kind of person who feels bad. It's exhausting.
So how do you short-circuit that spiral?
Manson's answer is surprisingly simple. He calls it simple non-fuckery. You just accept the negative feeling without adding that second layer of judgment. You just say to yourself, I feel like crap right now and I'm anxious, but who gives a fuck? That acceptance breaks the loop.
I think we've all met people who are experts at that secondary judgment. And this whole refusal to accept negative states, it ties directly into what he calls the entitlement sickness.
It's the belief that you deserve comfort and happiness and success just because you exist, or because you had a good idea. And that expectation leads people to see every minor setback as some huge injustice.
And this is where we meet Jimmy, the delusional entrepreneur,
Gotcha.
the guy who's all buzzwords and forced positivity, always talking about his next big idea, his massive future success. But in reality, he was a deadbeat who never actually did anything.
Jimmy is the perfect critique of that old feel-good self-esteem movement. He had this delusional level of self-confidence. He felt great about himself, but he hadn't earned it. He thought he deserved success without the painful work.
That's a tough lesson, because we're always told to fake it till you make it. But Manson is arguing that just feeling good about yourself means nothing unless you have a good reason to.
Exactly. True self-worth, he says, isn't measured by how you feel about your strengths. It's measured by how you feel about the negative parts of yourself. If you can honestly look at your flaws like being disorganized or unreliable and take responsibility to fix them, that's real worth.
So if we stop chasing these manufactured highs and we drop our entitlement, we can actually start to embrace pain, because pain is the key to change.
It is. Pain is a feature, not a bug. He even personifies this with Disappointment Panda, who delivers the harsh truth. Suffering is biologically useful. Pain, physical and psychological, is just nature's preferred way to inspire change. It's a feedback mechanism.
And that's not a new idea, really. I mean, the Buddha argued that life itself is a form of suffering. Dissatisfaction is just part of being human. You solve one problem, you create a new one.
Which leads to a core realization. We shouldn't hope for a life without problems. We should hope for a life full of good problems, the kind that challenge us and feel meaningful.
And the power of that struggle comes from choice. The marathon analogy is perfect here. Running 26.2 miles with a gun to your head is terrifying pain, but running that exact same distance because you trained and chose it, that's a glorious self-actualizing milestone. The suffering is the same, but the experience is totally different.
The difference is that sense that we chose it, that we are responsible for it, which brings up a critical distinction he makes: responsibility versus fault.
Okay, clarify that for us.
Fault is past tense. Who caused it? Responsibility is present tense. Who's dealing with it now? If a baby is left on your doorstep, it is not your fault. But it is 100% your responsibility to deal with that baby.
So many people might be to blame for your unhappiness, but nobody is ever responsible for your unhappiness but you.
Because even in the face of tragedy, you still choose your response. The example of Malala Yousafzai is so profound. Being shot in the face was not her fault. But she chose to respond by becoming an advocate, an author, a Nobel winner. She took responsibility for turning her pain into power.
That's the ultimate expression of choosing your struggle. So the question isn't, what do you want to enjoy? But what pain are you willing to sustain? Because fulfillment is earned through managing those struggles.
We've covered a lot of ground here, from the backwards law to the need to choose our struggles based on better values.
And those better values, just to recap, they have to be reality-based, socially constructive, and controllable. Things like honesty or humility, not external uncontrollable stuff like being popular or always being right.
Right. When you select better values, you automatically get better problems. And that is the definition of real progress.
This whole philosophy requires you to constantly question yourself, which leads us to his final, really provocative thought. He calls it Manson's law of avoidance.
This one is a powerful identity check. The law states, the more something threatens your identity, the more you will avoid it. This is why people avoid failure. It threatens their identity of being competent.
But it's also why people sometimes avoid success. Success can threaten that comfortable identity of being practical or humble. It's scary to shake up your comfort zone, even if that zone is painful.
To grow, you have to be willing to admit you're wrong. It's often easier to sit in the painful certainty of I am an undesirable person than to actually test that belief and risk rejection.
We should stop striving for certainty. Certainty is the enemy of growth. We need to embrace doubt and ask ourselves, what if I'm wrong? Wrong about my problems, wrong about my values.
Because you don't magically go from being wrong to being right in one big leap. You just go from being wrong to being slightly less wrong.
And accepting our wrongness today, choosing to be uncomfortable with it, that's the only real way to become a little less wrong tomorrow. A truly counterintuitive but powerful way to live a good life.
Thank you for listening and for being part of this journey. We'll meet again in the next episode, so don't miss the chance to dive deeper into the world of books with us. Make sure to follow the channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated with everything new. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to leave a like. Take care and see you soon.